Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. It is time for episode 4 of 4 of reading the internet's favorite books for 2024. I'm pitting YouTube against Instagram, against TikTok. This is the TikTok episode. Currently, BookTube is in first position with 19.25 points out of a potential 25, just slightly beating out Bookstagram that has 19 points. And today we're gonna see if TikTok can edge it out and become our winner. I just hope we have banger after banger. I haven't had a 5-star read in a minute. Let's start with a little yap session, deciding my TBR and talking about why this was such a struggle. I live and die by the TikTok algorithm. I love it, right? It's fantastic. My FYP, also fantastic. I really think the people who say that book talk is just the same books over and over again, they see the same people over and over again. You're just telling on yourself a little bit with the things that you engage with, because my FYP, there's nothing better. It gives me everything that I want all the time. The diversity with the people, with the books, with the reading, with the style of content. It's a good time over there. The algorithm is my favorite. The search functionality, not so much. I think there's something to be desired a little bit there. And I found it hard to find people who had a plethora in common with me. This is not about reading TikTok's favorite books as a collective. This is about finding people with a lot of things in common with me in their favorites, and then finding something else that I should like based on our reading taste. The people who I follow and the people who show up on my For You page, they read such a wide variety of genres, and that's why it was a struggle, because there's such a range of taste. Like every single person in their favorites, at least that I was watching, that I typically engage with, they had like a book from every single genre. And that doesn't necessarily help me, because I want to hone in on like, okay, me and this girl, we have 10 horror books in common that are our favorites. Let me grab one more from her list. But instead, it's like we have one nonfiction in common, one literary fiction in common, one horror, one mystery. And then it's like their only other thing on their list is the high fantasy. And I don't know if our fantasy tastes align, because we're reading such like a jumble of things and loving a jumble of things, which is so beautiful and wonderful, but it could really lead to such a mess in this video, I fear. But also because of the search function, where did I put my phone, is a little bit messy, and also scrubbing through favorites is really challenging. And like I had to watch so many TikToks, and I just feel like there are probably so many people out there that I never got served their content, and I probably have things in common with so many people that I just never found. But I did what I could with what I had, and let's go through the 5 people who are choosing my TBR today. Let's start with Kenzie. This is Kenzie's bookshelf. Kenzie and I both adored The 7-Year Slip, romance. The Will of the Many, fantasy. A Dowry of Blood, gothic. Monday's Not Coming, YA mystery thriller. Chain Gang All-Stars, a science fiction. The Reformatory, a horror. Tress of the Emerald Sea, a light, cozier fantasy. So we have 7 things in common. Now what I have to choose from Kenzie, there is no other romance, there's no other horror, there's no other science fiction. It has to be a fantasy. So I'm going to be reading a very long fantasy in this video.
Starting off with my top book of 2024, The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong, because this book was absolutely unreal. My favorite mythology book, The Fury of Gods by John Gwynne. My favorite epic fantasy, The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winters. My favorite historical fiction, Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. My favorite book with the Asian author, The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, because obviously. My favorite dark academia, Nocticadia by Carrie Lake.
Rage of Dragons, which I just DNF'd. Pachinko, The Sword of Kaigen, The Poppy War, or Nocticadia. I feel as though the right choice would probably be Pachinko, because it's so many people's favorite, and it's just like an adored, well-known and beloved book. Another good choice would be The Poppy War, because I've read from that author before. Another good choice would be Nocticadia, because I've been getting into romantasy a little bit. But no, I am going to indeed read The Sword of Kaigen. I have had this in my TBR closet for like a year. I don't think I ever hauled it. I never showed it to you. I originally heard of this from my bestie Erin, and it's something that intrigued me. I can't remember at this point what it was, but we'll find out together. Moving on to Jose of Spine and Dandy. Here are 6 things we have in common. Near the Bone, horror. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, literary fiction. Chlorine, and The Eyes of the Best Part. So like coming of age, strange, weird horror. Natural Beauty, another one similar. Slewfoot, That's got horror fantasy vibes. And then to choose from,
First up is The Island by Adrian McKinty. They find themselves stranded and hunted by a group of criminals. Boy Parts by Eliza Clark has the most morally complex FMC I read all year. Sugar by Mia Ballard, who navigates witchcraft and deceit to hide her dark secrets and get exactly what she wants. Awake in the Night by Shauna McElhaney is a paranormal story about a couple who moves into their dream home, which houses a lot of really dark secrets.
Boy Parts, I think is a queer coming of age. Sugar, which I just bought because I love the cover. This one to me seems like the most horror leaning, so I think this will be the pick, but I'm also gonna give Boy Parts a go. There was one more called Awake in the Night, which is like paranormal. Maybe I'll grab like a digital version of that and listen to the first chapter. So I have a decision to make here for sure. Now, Jose and I might have a lot in common, but when I tell you we also have a lot not in common. This creator also made a video of their most hated books of the year, and 5 of the 9 listed are some of my all-time favorite books. Yeah, they are. So this should be interesting. I'm gonna try to make the right decision by trying some things out. Then we've got Jenny's book club. So for Jenny, there was a monthly post where this creator shared favorites of like every month. So within there was Mayfly mentioned, My Sister the Serial Killer, When the Reckoning Comes, and Yellowface. I don't know if these have a lot in common. Well, I'm gonna say like bold women. I think that's what we're highlighting here. And then also, if I looked at their 5-star favorite books, we also had Chlorine, and then as an honorable mention, Bloom and Confessions. So in total, I'm gonna say we have 7 things in common, and there are only 2 options from the favorites list for me to choose from, and they're both by the same author. One is called Exalted, and one is called Perfume and Pain. And the library chose for me because this was the one that they had, so I grabbed it. It's also the shorter of the 2, and I think I'm gonna need that with the longer fantasy that I'm gonna be reading. Now on to Emmeline. This is the hardest decision for me to make because there is a nonfiction video listing favorites where some of my favorite, well, actually a specific one, All in Her Head, was mentioned in there. And I was really into like this medical nonfiction. And so I want to choose another nonfiction.
Legacy by Dr. Uche Blackstock. Legacy is a very good blend of memoir, but also history, how Black bodies were used to build the foundations of our current healthcare system.
And then fiction favorites. And in the fiction favorites, we had The Wedding People, A Sky Full of Elephants, and The Husbands. 2 out of those 3 are like real world, but like a little bit speculative, and that is a favorite thing of mine. And in their fiction favorites, there was this book.
The Day Tripper by James Goodhand is a time travel romance, which has quickly become like my favorite niche. And he ends up traveling to different points in his life. And you see him during this journey make these changes slowly, and then the changes get bigger and bigger until the end he is like a completely changed person.
Which sounds like something that I would absolutely love, kind of similar to The Husbands or The Midnight Library. It's like a little bit of time travel, and that seems really fun. But also there was a medical nonfiction, and I think this one would just be a good read. It's Black History Month, like this feels like the right choice. Then I also just randomly grabbed another one mentioned, You Are Eating an Orange, You Are Naked. I'm not even sure what this is, but the title intrigued me, so I'm gonna try out all of those. Then lastly, there was one creator who I have the most in common with of anybody here, and it was that perfect list of horror. It's all horror. We have our horror tastes completely in common, and that's Literary Mad Max. So of the top 10 favorite horror listed, we both loved The Horror, I Was a Teenage Slasher, We Spread, Rest Stop, Sloofa, The Eyes of the Best Part, We Used to Live Here, and Monstrilio. Like all-time favorite horror for me. And I have 2 things to choose from. One I'm not interested in.
American Rapture was one of the most devastating books that I read last year, particularly because it has a trope that I usually avoid. This is about the apocalypse. People are sick with lust.
I've been following along people sharing their early reviews and now current reviews, and it's not something I want to read. So I really only have one decision, and I already went and picked it up. You might have already seen it in a video.
The Way Up is Death is a last minute surprise for me. I love this so much. It's about a group of 13 people who have to go up this tower. It's full of campy horror, but also reminds me of Midnight Library. There's a lot of like nuggets about life sprinkled throughout, and I think emotional horror is one of the subgenres that I find myself really loving.
So this creator got an early copy and loved it, so I went out and bought it on its publication date, and I'm worried about it because I don't really love when science fiction and horror mix. So those are the 5 creators. Please go down below in the description and click their links and find them on TikTok and follow them and watch me throughout this vlog make some decisions and hopefully love a lot of books. The first decision has been made and it was easier than I thought, though I was leaning towards this one. Legacy, this is the one I'm going to pick. I thought for sure the Day Tripper would appeal to me right away and I would kind of put it on the back burner and reserve it later this year. I don't know that I'm going to. I did not like the narration style of the first chapter. I didn't like the character voice. I was not connecting with it. I don't know why. It was only 15 pages, but yeah, it wasn't working for me. This man suddenly appears 15 years in the future and has to figure stuff out. I want to be more interested in it than I am. The first chapter of this was also not the most compelling. It was about a fox and a woman in a zoo, and it was like written to someone, and I wanted to be more intrigued. But I am finally in the mood for a nonfiction, so I'm just gonna lean into this. I'm actually gonna start it. Well, I started it, but I'm going to fully dive into it tomorrow. I'm on a bit of a time crunch today. I'm almost done with Legacy. I have about a quarter to go. This is much more of a memoir than medical information. There is that in it. It's not any piece of information that I don't already know. And that's just simply because I've read other things and I've consumed other media talking about medical racism. All of the ideas presented in here, the misinformation, the idea that people thought and still think Black folks have a higher pain tolerance and literally thicker skin, the discrimination regarding people coming into the hospital with certain conditions and doctors saying that they're just there because they want drugs, certain communities being completely underserved and people being treated differently in different hospitals and by different care teams. And all of that is something that Uche grew up understanding as a Black woman in America. Also, her mother was a physician. And this really, a lot of it feels like an ode to her mother and just this great respect for her mother. She died at such a young age, and her sister are following in their mother's footsteps as far as their medical journey. There's multiple moments where she's like, I wish my mom was here to see this, or when I did this, I thought of what my mom would have done, or my mom would have been proud. And that's also beautiful. I think the awareness that she's trying to offer is pretty surface level, and that's not a fault of the book. She can't get into so many other concepts and ideas as far as medical racism unless she just starts with the surface and the basic things. And the person that I think this would be most handy for is probably anybody who's beginning the idea of going into med school and having any type of medical career, because clearly there are so many people who she encounters throughout her career who are doing things wrong, who have been taught wrongly, who are teaching other people wrongly. And it's just this constant cycle that you think at this point in the world, things would be better understood, but there are just people who have decades of experience and started out their career with people supervising them and teaching them who were racist and who had biases, and that just, it really permeates and continues, even in a field that's supposed to just be about supporting people and helping people. And I respect that she doesn't, this is about her personal journey. Like I said, she's introducing these ideas and the things that she grew up knowing, but also encounters being in medicine, witnesses other professionals doing, and then also as a patient, discussing the things that happened to her, even though she's so knowledgeable and literally works at the hospital. But when she was dealing with people, there was racist practices against her, and she's pondering a lot of things that have happened in her life. and how much of it has to do with prejudice. But I also just wish that she would take opportunities to get deeper into things, because she mentions so many different things, and the point of the book isn't like every single thing wrong with medicine, but I find myself wishing that it was, because I love the way that she's talking about things and the way she's introducing ideas, and all of her experience is so valuable to read. That I flagged this specific part where she was talking about giving birth and like where people give birth, and like in hospitals versus at home, and doulas and midwives, and the different ways that birth can be easier and the ways that birth can go wrong. And especially if you're a Black woman, the mortality rate is much higher than other groups because of racism, because of mistreatment, because of the assumption that you are over exaggerating something when you come in with a problem, and people losing their pregnancies earlier than, like, losing their pregnancies at all when they shouldn't have. And this section right here just very quickly said, perhaps more calculating and disturbing have been the financial incentives in terms of insurance reimbursement that help to turn birthing into and sustain it as a medicalized and hospitalized procedure that generates revenue. And that's all we get about that. Like, the rest of it was about her personal experience, because it's a memoir. It's about her being pregnant, giving birth, her whole journey with that. And just that section, I want her to talk about that. I want her to talk about the fact that getting an epidural at all increases your chances of having to have a C-section, and that 40% of births in the States, was a stat shared in here, end up in cesarean section. And that is absolutely not the global average and not the global norm, and not a number that is necessary. Epidurals have a higher chance of having a cesarean. Pitocin has a higher chance of you getting a cesarean. She's not talking about any of those things, but I want her to. I want her to mention the fact that because it's revenue generating, doctors are incentivized to make birth go faster. How there's so much damage being done, and people are being put at such a higher risk because they're just trying to be pushed through a system, and there are so many more complications than there need to be. But that's not what the book is about. But because I got a little bit of it, and she's a doctor, I want her to talk about it. I want her to talk about the ways that people are being paid and paid off. But because she's a medical professional, maybe she has a certain, she feels a responsibility or a certain like reason to protect the institute that she belongs to. But then there is tons of critiques, and as we follow her journey, she gets out of the medical practicing that she's doing, and she gets involved with like being a speaker, teaching other people about inclusion. And she, like many women of color, get kind of forced into a DEI role, and she sits on these panels and boards because she feels a responsibility to her community. But it's so strange that constantly in every single aspect of society, it's the people who have been historically oppressed or historically neglected, historically left out of opportunities, who are then being told, you fix it. Like, oh, there's all of this shit wrong at the workplace. Like, there's racism and prejudice, and women are being treated terribly. Okay, women, you fix it. You sit on the panel, you sit on the board. You teach us how to fix the racist and misogynistic ways that we as a society exist. And so she, like many people, found herself in that position and got overworked and overrun, and was given this title and kind of had to act as a figurehead, and then slowly realized she didn't really have that much power. Everything she wanted to do and wanted to change, they didn't want to listen. And so she left her career to do something different. And there's still a great impact that she's making, and I'm enjoying following her journey and learning about her as a person. But it also is so like devastating that we are losing so many people, I think specifically like medical professionals and teachers, because their profession is not being respected. They're not being paid enough. They're not given the proper hours. They're not given the proper time and attention that they need, yet we need those roles so much, and these people are leaving their careers. Like, it's just so frustrating. But she is making a fantastic impact on the world, And I think this is a solid book to introduce you to all of these ideas if you haven't thought about them before. I'm not supposed to be rating memoirs this year. I just remembered I'm not supposed to be rating memoirs. So publicly, this is unrated. Like to the world, on Goodreads, on TikTok, anywhere else, there's gonna be no rating associated with this. I'm not going to advertise my rating of this because it's a memoir. And anything that I wanted this book to be is not a valid criticism because the book is exactly as intended. I think it's I was trying to put my elbow down, there's nothing there. It's an introductory idea to all of these concepts, and she needs to introduce them that way because this is her story, her life story. It's not about medicine, it's about her relationship with medicine. And if you're interested in anything that she mentions in here, because I found that there were a couple moments that it felt strange that she didn't mention the specific book that things were from. Like she referenced this quote from another person. She said the name of the person. She said there was this study or research paper from this person and this quote came from it, but she never referenced what it was called. And I wanted to like search it up because what she was talking about was something that I was interested in. But of course there is like many pages of references in the back, and I went to it. I remember it was chapter 11. So it was The Infuriating Journey from Pet to Threat, How Bias Undermines Black Women at Work. The quote was regarding what I was saying before about her being put in a certain position, almost like being like gently led somewhere and just expected to behave and learn something, but not to then grow, not to then be a leader of a group, not to then surpass the other people who gave them that certain position or opportunities. And as soon as certain people are excelling, they need to be taken down a peg. And I want to go on to read that. And there's a lot of moments like that when things are mentioned, and if you want a better understanding of something or you want someone to go deeper on a topic, there's plenty of opportunity. Anyway, so I'll tell you and only you, because for the sake of the video, that this was a 4. So the video now has 4 stars technically, and we'll see how the next books do. If I had more time, I would like throw this as a 6th book and I would read 5 more, but I've got to keep things moving to get all of my content up that I've planned. So technically this doesn't have a rating, but in this context, it is getting a 4. This one is such a tough call. I am gonna go with Sugar because I bought it and I felt like it would align with what I was interested in. But surprising, I guess it's not surprising, like we have things in common, so I should like everything that Jose mentioned. I was gonna try out The Island, but I think I already read the first chapter of that before, and I think that one being a thriller, I should pick something that's more in the horror and dark comedy area. So that's the first chapters that I read. This one I thought was just like a coming of age, but it's not. It's a darker story. And it opened up with this woman who is a bartender, and she also does photography, and she took a photo of an underage boy. And her mother came into the bar, and his mother came into the bar and smacked her, and his name was Dean. And then I read the first chapter of Sugar, and this woman, our main character, murders a man named Dean. Then I also read the first chapter of Awake in the Night? Is that what it was called? And it was interesting. There were these 2 women who moved into this house and they met their new neighbor, and there's a little bit of history. I think that it's a dual timeline, and you're learning about something that happened in the past and who's like haunting the house now. So I think I might come back. I'll come back to this one. I'm not sure if I'll come back to Boy Parts, though I know a lot of people love it. I just don't know if it's gonna be for me. But Sugar could very well be. This is the first line. The plan to kill Dean unfurled in my mind like a dark bloom in the midst of an otherwise idle Tuesday evening, the kind where the air tastes like spent fuel and the sky bleeds orange, stubbornly holding on to the last dregs of daylight. And that has really been indicative of the entire first chapter. Very metaphorical writing, constant references to other things. Like, I was as angry as this thing. I ate something that reminded me of this. Smiled at me, that smile frayed around the edges, no longer a symbol of mutual desire, but a relic of what we used to be. Ironic how the very things that once drew me to him had become markers of our mutual decline. That fucker. So she married this man and he cheated on her with her best friend. That's what we learned in the first chapter. So she kills him and then she's just on this descent into terrible things. Like she's sleeping with random people. She's maybe there's other murder happening. I'm not always into the murderous woman perspective. So I don't know what kind of rating this will get, but I am intrigued by the opening. So this is what I'm reading today. Here's what I'll say about Sugar halfway through. I don't know if I'm loving it, but it's very readable. Like I have just flown through these 120 pages. It took halfway through the book before we even got to like the magical witch situation. Our main character, Satara, is spiraling. She is doing terrible things. She has certain obsessions with people. She's trying to get people to love her. She wants to kill people. She wants to get revenge on people, but she's like losing grasp on everything in life. Relationships, friendships, her job, like everything is kind of crumbling and she just doesn't really care and she's doing whatever she wants. And she's encountering a lot of different people and people who treat her differently from one another. At the same time, this is set in the 70s and she is half Black, half Native American, and as is the author. So she's experiencing discrimination, but she's also experiencing fetishization. Why is that such a hard word to say? Based on how people, you know, react to her. She goes by the name Sugar in a certain capacity and is meeting up with men, and she's just fucking with everyone, and she's on acid like every day, encouraging other people to do it. And now some of her crimes are getting uncovered, or people are starting to suspect her of like not being a good person. Halfway through, she decided somebody that she wants to be obsessed with her and love her, and heard from a friend of hers that there's like this witch that can make people in love with you. And so that's the journey that she's on now. And I'm just interested to see where this is going to go. Like what kind of message this is intending at the end. Like, is it going to be, am I supposed to feel like, is it a good for her story? Obviously you don't support her, but like, do you want to in a way by the end? I don't know. Or is it going to be about her like changing her ways and realizing that she could be a good person? I truly have no idea what direction this book is going. And as far as the writing, it's something that I think other people would refer to as overwritten, as in it's using far more description than is necessary and is prioritizing that over the plot. I'm having a good time with it because I love the writing. I don't know that everybody would. I do wish this had an audiobook a little bit because I would like to hear this inner monologue. Never even read the back. Satara is unhinged and unwell. Indeed. I'm gonna fly through this. I also have to get groceries at some point. I got my groceries and now I'm gonna make my lunch. In honor of Sugar, I'm gonna put cherries in my yogurt bowl. I know, it's pretty exciting over here. I don't normally put cherries in. Sometimes, you know, if I have them. And I was just watching the latest top 5 beatdown. I don't know if you guys watch Watcher. That's pretty much the only thing I watch from Watcher. And they were doing like top 5 best fruits. And I definitely need, when I watch those, I don't know if anyone else does, but before I watch it, I make my own list and then I see how well my list matches up with the people on the show, or I see if their opinions are going to sway mine. So my 5 fruit, if you could only have 5 fruits for the rest of your life, what would you pick? I was thinking cherries would be on mine, but I don't think they can be. There are certain fruits, I would say watermelon and cherry and peaches, that like when I'm craving one, nothing else is going to satisfy that, but I don't crave it consistently like every day of my life. The fruits that I do eat every single day of my life are mango, strawberry, and banana, and avocado. I eat avocado every single day. I can't imagine going a day without avocado. In fact, if I could only choose one fruit for the rest of my life, I think it would have to be avocado. And I feel like that's definitely not going to be a popular opinion. Plus it's not sweet, which is like pretty devastating because then I could never eat another sweet fruit again. So maybe I would choose banana just because like It's good and it's nutritious. I think my ranking, yeah, would go banana, avocado, mango, strawberry, and then what's my fifth? Oh, you know what my fifth is? And I wrote this down and I was glad somebody mentioned it in it because I was like, let's not forget about lemon. I know like not many people are just sitting there and chewing on a lemon, neither am I. But if I could never have a lemon again, if I could never cook with lemon, I would be like half of the things that I make for dinner would be off the table. This isn't in order of favorites. In order of favorites, it would be mango first. Like there's nothing better than a fresh mango, but it wouldn't be my number one pick if I could only have 5 fruits for the rest of my life. Okay, here's lunch. And now to finish my book. What's happening? What? Oh my god. This book just got a little goofy. How do I begin to review this? This is self-published. It feels self-published. It's lacking a little bit of finesse. It's just, I don't know, a little unbalanced as far as content and like the direction you think it could go. But then it's also just like everything that it was supposed to be. It got a little stupid, but stupid in a way you might not see coming. So it might really work for you. I do not know what my rating of this is. I really don't. It's maybe, is it close to a 4? It can be a 4. It's a 3.75. You're following this woman in a spiral, right? And so that is what the story is. But rather than like exploring the complex emotions and that being it, it goes like off the rails. It could have been a little more horrifying, a little more gross, or it could have gone in like the other direction that was more moving and thoughtful. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I barely even know what like genre this properly fits into. But it also pulled off some interesting reveals, I guess. It was a little ridiculous, far-fetched in certain ways. I need to read something else today. I'm very much in the mood to read, so I'm just gonna ride that train to the next thing. I actually think this one would be an interesting read next. This is another fiction about a woman. It looks potentially witchy, but I think it's just more astrological. There are 2 different perspectives. One woman who runs an astrology account on Instagram, that's Emily, and then another woman, Dawn, is 48 and she's waiting tables. They meet up at a gay bar. Lots of social commentary. Oh, and a shocking connection is revealed. All right. Okay, I'm gonna pick up the audiobook. I'm gonna try that out. I did not like what I just read. I just don't like the character voice, but maybe it's just like what's in my head is the character voice. So let's get a vibe with the audiobook. Oh no, I hate the audiobook. Am I crazy or is this like awful?
But she was the freakish one. If I had gone to high school with her, I would have bullied her. And she had no idea what she was talking about. How was it my issue that everyone always left me? starting with my dad when I was 16, who, mind you, was rich. I was the victim here. I was left with nothing.
I don't think I've been so turned off by a book this quickly in a while. No offense to the narrator. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna try Perfume and Pain. Yeah, what? Okay, I listened to the first 60% of the audiobook for Perfume and Pain by Anna Dorn. And I don't know how I'm feeling about it yet, but I checked the library app and apparently it's in stock. So I drove into the city so I could swing by and finish it physically, because I don't think it's the audiobook that's making me feel about it, but on the off chance that it is, I'm gonna go pick up the physical one. I have not been in a parkade since I got my roof rack, and it took me halfway, I'm on like the 5th floor, it took me halfway up to realize that the sound that I heard when I entered, I thought somebody hit something. I was like looking around, I was like, oh, that was a loud noise. It was me. My roof rack hit the little like thing that tells you how tall you can be. And so I was driving just fine, and I was like, oh my God, am I gonna hit the roof at some point? So I'm driving so fucking slow all the way up here. And I'm starting to get people behind me, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm stressed. I feel like I'm about to hit the ceiling, but maybe I'm not. I'm just like creeping through, trying not to hit anything. But I made it just fine. I was like shaking. I don't know what's wrong with me. And so I just sat here for a minute to go on TikTok, calm my nerves. I don't know what's wrong with me today. First thing that I see when I open TikTok is the pistachio Dubai strawberry cups. And I think I need to make these because nowhere in Kelowna makes them. I feel like if you're in a big city, like some type of local business has jumped on the trend and has made them available. Like, this looks amazing. So I'm just gonna make it myself if I can find the ingredients. We have a pretty decent Mediterranean market, so I imagine they would have the things that I need. So that's what I'm gonna do, because I figured if we're doing a TikTok video, usually if I do a TikTok focused video, I have to participate in some type of TikTok foodie trend. I love pistachios, I love strawberries, I like baklava. So like, this just seems like something that I would love that isn't too difficult to make myself. It's annoying that no Kelowna business has hopped on this. Like, there's literally a place that sells strawberries and chocolate in a cup downtown. Okay, so I'm gonna run into the library, and I think maybe I will finish the book while I'm in there. I don't know how long it is, but I got through the audiobook really quickly. So maybe it's only like, I don't know, 50 more pages. Okay, let's go. See, I'm not even that close. Okay, I finished the book, and I'll tell you about it in a second, but now I'm like stressed out. I need to leave the parkade, and what if there's a part of the parkade that you leave upon exit that I would hit? And that's why you can't enter, but then I didn't hit anything on the way up. I'm so annoyed at myself right now. Here, I'll record in case I hit something for legal purposes. Maybe you can hear me hit the sign on the way out. Jesus. Oh, I was gonna clean my camera. Someone help me. This is why I don't leave the house. I'm too stupid to exist in public. Please don't hit anything. Please don't hit anything. Throw up. I'm like ducking as if something's gonna hit me in the head. Oh no, I'm gonna hit this, aren't I? I'm gonna hit this. Yeah, I hit it. Oh my God. I'm gonna hit this too. That's so embarrassing. I made it out and I'm gonna cry. Okay, I'm still on the hunt for the ingredients. This vlog is just taking a turn, okay? We're gonna talk about food before the book. I should have updated you on the book halfway through the book, but then I just forgot before I went into the library. So book stuff is on pause. If I don't find all the ingredients, which the first store was a bust, here's another food trend. Maybe from like a year ago, but they only just came to Canada. They're the Fruit Riot things. They didn't have mango. They had the grape, which I'm interested in. I like sour stuff. But the thing with me is like, I don't need an incentive to eat fruit. And I feel like that's who these are for. But I've just like always been so eager to try them because I've seen them all over TikTok. Okay. It's so cold. Those are good. I would never buy them again. Maybe Lamb and Rob will like them. I don't know. I've had frozen grapes before. I used to put them in my wine when I used to drink wine. Oh, no synthetic colors. That's nice. Why did I get 2 bags? Because they look different. And I was like, well, I obviously have to have both. The Mediterranean market had pistachio cream. There was a giant container. I was like, oh God, I'm gonna have to buy that. But then I saw the little ones. They also had my favorite candy, the little piggies. And then I found it, Kataifa. It's phyllo dough, but shredded. And it's frozen, which isn't ideal, but that's fine. And then I bought a pretzel, because that sounded great. I'm home. Liam is gonna be home any minute now, so I wanna wrap up my thoughts about Perfume and Pain while I make the strawberry chocolate things. I am gonna give a 3. It's one of those books that didn't really resonate with me perfectly, and I didn't like love anything about it, but it's a perfectly fine book. It's one of those books that really, I think, makes sense that a lot of people on TikTok have been loving it. Like, it's one of the ones that I've seen in the past year blowing up because it's a very internet book. It's a very of its time kind of story. If you are super aware of all of the discourse, not even on a certain topic, but like all the discourse happening on Twitter all the time, this is a book for you. It's very referencey. It's like constantly referring to like a ton of things in the queer community and otherwise. If you are chronically online, not that everyone who loves this is chronically online, but if you are chronically online, you will probably like this. It's just very self-aware. We're following a character who is a writer, and again, with like so many lit fic books, she's struggling in life. She's like at a crossroads or trying to decide about careers and relationships, and things are moving when we get to meet this character. She has one of her projects about to become a film, and she has a relationship with like the producer who wants to also star in it, who wants to spend time with her to get to know her. Even though like she's not the character in the story, she wants to like get in her mind. Meanwhile, she's in the midst of a couple different relationships. Someone's obsessed with her, she's obsessed with someone, she's just moving houses, and she has a lot of things to just figure out in life. Her name's Astrid. It kicks off with her talking about astrology and being an author of a book about astrology, and she just kind of got canceled and has some people iffy about her, you know, being a public figure. And that's so interesting because the other book that I started reading, Exalted by this author, was really heavily about zodiac stuff. So it's just interesting to see like the reference. Astrid is not necessarily a likable character, but she isn't supposed to be and doesn't really care about her behavior. She's kind of hurting people, but people are hurting her. Like, it's just, she's just kind of a mess. And I think that's a relatable character for a lot of people, and it's a very unlikable character for a lot of people. I just felt like fine about it. I didn't feel emotionally invested at any point. I didn't care much about this, but I did get more invested like the second half. The physical read was fine. So yeah, I'm landing on a 3. Now let's see if it's delicious. I'm sure it will be, but was it worth, I mean, the time, yeah, it was easy, but is it worth the money? Because these ingredients are expensive. It tastes exactly as I imagined. It's funny because there's a lot of people who are saying that people are forgetting tahini, and that's what balances it out because pistachio cream is really sweet. I might have preferred it without the tahini. Or maybe I put too much. I think I did 1 tablespoon of tahini and 3 tablespoons of pistachio cream, but maybe it was supposed to be 6 tablespoons of pistachio cream. Love it. 9 out of 10. Okay, I just went and got my hair done. I'm back to being ginger, copper vibes. And check it out, I match my book way better. That was the whole point. I just started reading this while I was waiting for my appointment, and I got 50 pages in. I think it's interesting. I'm wondering if it's the type of story that you just are interested in the journey and the concept, or if I'm really going to come to care about these characters, and if I should like really distinguish who they are in my mind. You know what I mean? Because sometimes I'm just reading to read and I'm just like in the story, and sometimes I really don't pay attention to who's who when we have like 13 people, right? And we're getting to know them all. I think if I was at home, maybe I would have been taking notes and I would have been like trying to remember who was who and like writing down their characteristics, because I want to remember who matters the most. And 3 chapters in, there have been specific people who we're focused on. There's one, a father and daughter, and one who is this guy who like works in publishing. He's a celebrity, and he's trying to figure out if he's like on a reality TV show. That's kind of his theory. And everyone's trying to figure out how they got to where they're at, because suddenly they just like appear on this tower that has appeared in the sky. And it's been the talk of the town for a while, in the world. People wondering what this thing is that has just shown up. And then suddenly a bunch of people arrive at the floating tower, and they're figuring out amongst themselves like what it is. So the celebrity guy is like, oh, are we all, because they're all strangers, he's like, so is everyone here a celebrity and we're like on this reality show? There's one person who thinks this is like heaven, like this is the moment they get to ascend, and they're all kind of challenging each other, but we're still at the very early stages before we found out like anything. And so my question right now is if we're going to follow like all 13 equally, or if the people we've established as being significant characters are going to be the ones that continue. It doesn't matter. Those are the only thoughts that I really have at this point. Is I'm curious like what the focus of the story is going to be and how I should be reading it. Late night sleepy girl update. It's not that late. What time is it? 10:30. It has taken me all day to get through half of this. I am struggling a little bit. I don't dislike it. I just don't like it. It's reminding me of reading Horror Store by Grady Hendrix, where it's just like constant action. It's that type of book. I mean, you get that from how it looks. It kind of feels like a video game though, so I would mix. What are you looking at?
I just thought of what anime reminds me of.
Okay.
Tower of God.
Because it's about a tower?
Yeah, it's the same thing happens, and it ends up being like all these people fight, and you find out the winner was actually like has the power of God and is just like unstoppable.
Were they all strangers when they got there?
Yeah, from around the world.
And were there different like levels they had to complete?
Yeah.
Did someone?
No, but everyone just died whenever.
Interesting. What'd you say? Tower of God?
Yeah.
I was explaining the plot to Rob as best as I could. I think it's definitely readable. Yeah, it's readable. Like, it's not keeping my attention, but I see how it could for someone else. Like, it's action-packed. There's constantly things happening. And the interpersonal relationships aren't so much a part of it, but, like, that's a little bit. And, you know, there's not as much, like, existential, you know, thought and solving and learning, but there is as much as I want, but there is some of it. So I think it's objectively a good mix of stuff. I am definitely interested enough in it to like finish it and learn the reason behind everything. That's like the number one thing that is intriguing about it, but it is taking me a while to get through it. It feels like it could be a 3 point something by the end, which does not bode well for the overall ratings, because this and the Sword of Kaigen have to get, one has to get a 4, one has to get a 5 in order for this to beat BookTube. I wish I could say I'm having a fantastic time and the ending doesn't matter, and like the journey to get there is what's enjoyable, but I do find myself just wanting to get to the end already and having the answers. It's definitely fast moving. I understand it being marketed as horror as much as sci-fi, because while the concept is science fiction, the actual journey is more horror because of the horrific things that are being witnessed by these characters, and they're living in a lot of fear because they don't know what's going to happen as they try to get through all of the like floors of this tower. But it doesn't read like the type of horror novel that you would feel scared reading. It's not creepy, like nothing like that, which isn't what I was expecting going into it anyway, so that's fine. It's not a complaint. I want to set expectations for anybody else who might take this recommendation from me at the end. It feels like it could be a 3. But the ending could make it better. It could make it worse. I just don't want it to be cheesy. I just don't want it to be the type of story that goes, And the goal all along was for everyone to realize they needed their community and like they all worked together and accomplished the goal, and like that's the whole takeaway. But I feel like it could go in that direction. It could get weird or it could get soft. Like, I don't know. At the halfway point, they are contemplating why the suspected aliens have put them in this situation, and they're thinking maybe it's a test for them to see what humanity is like. Kind of like the posed question of if aliens were to come to Earth, like what's the first thing you would show them? Or like who's a human being who would be really exemplary and could just like give the right idea of what humans are like. What would the interpretation of our planet be from an outsider? Like, that's the concept introduced. I think, like, my theory, which I'm not going to confirm or deny by the end, but I don't think it's so much a test of these humans by the aliens. If it is aliens, I think it's more trying to get the people to work together and show that they need each other. Because this book is set in our current time and is mentioning occasionally things like the pandemic and lockdown, I get the feeling that this book just wants to say something about humanity and that like we need to come together and work together, and they're being put through these trials to show each other that they need one another. And then because they've been this like global sensation by the end, they can go back to Earth and be an example to everybody of how they all need each other. And then the Earth is healed and everyone is happy. I think that's cheesy. I think that's a perfectly valid reason for wanting to write a book, an inspiration for a book. But just for my reading taste, I like things to be a little grittier. And because the book is gritty, I think it's gonna have a wholesome ending. But I don't know. Like, I can't really tell, only being halfway through a book. So once I get to maybe the last 50 pages, I'll be sure to like turn on my camera and vlog that in case there's a reaction of sorts and we get answers and they're juicy. Nothing juicy yet. Me neither. Is this a reveal? No, not quite. The end is happening. It's underwhelming. Okay, there's an epilogue. Oh, that's it. Okay, that's a book. I'm gonna have to think on this, for a minute. So I'm gonna give this a 3. It feels like a 3. It's gonna be a 3. I definitely have a lot more in common with, I was gonna call her Max. I think her name is actually Madison. I'm getting sick. I feel like my brain is not functioning properly. Definitely will take more recommendations. She is far more well-versed in science fiction than I am. So I think some great recommendations could come from this creator. I'll actually link down below. I have this playlist going of people reading like my favorite books. She just did a video like this week. So at the same time we were reading each other's favorite books, which is fun. I just think that this was a little too long for me for what it was. I wasn't emotionally invested in the characters, but I don't think you're supposed to be, so that's not a fault of the book. But I think her and I both really like emotional horror, and this wasn't that when it could have been. There could have been more times where there was like a connection between characters and a really moving moment. There was like a couple of them, don't get me wrong, but that wasn't the purpose of it. And there are books out there that I enjoy that are totally not that at all. Like, they're not about the people at all. They're just about the situation. This kind of felt like a mix of like, okay, Squid Games, Ready Player One, maybe just because I don't read a lot of books that are like fast moving and feel like a video game. So I want to say How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying, but like not really. But also it kind of like Rest Stop, because of the terrorization. Like, these characters are being terrorized for so long, and that's like all this is. If this was like 10 times as long as what it was, it like, that's the feelings that this evokes. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe they're dealing with this. Oh my God, this is crazy. But then it's like over and over and over and over and over again. It was a lot to read for what I think is a payoff that makes sense, but not one that I really cared for. I wanted it to go far more off the rails and be so crazy and like have me gasping, because there are a lot of ways that this book could have gone. I respect the book that it is, but it was just a 3 for me. So here's the current ranking, and let's get into the final book. I have been feeling immense guilt for the last 3 days because I've been reading this for 3 days and I haven't updated you, and I've just felt this like heaviness that I am poorly making this video. That like, I don't know what to say about this book. I don't know how to talk about it. And I just keep reading it. Every time I pick it up, I'm like, oh my God, I can't read this. I have to tell them about it first. But I have nothing to say. Like I'm meandering through it, and it's a very battle, war heavy book. There is a lot of war. That's not necessarily what I was expecting. It is if I read what the book's about, but based on the communities who've been reading it, I thought it would be more family dynamics and more interpersonal conflict and existential conflict and that kind of fantasy novel. There are certain fantasy books that like transcend communities. It's like, is that a helicopter? I guess there was a lot of rain. It's probably blowing off some fruit. When there's like every community, like within fantasy, but even outside of it, is kind of like in agreement that a fantasy book is really good and is worth reading and has such a high Goodreads average rating, I think to myself, I could like this, even though it's a type of fantasy that doesn't on paper sound like it could be for me, because so many people love it and they talk so emotionally about it. It makes me want to pick it up. So that's why it was originally on my TBR. Over the last couple days, I almost DNF'd it a couple times. I actually started a couple of the other options, like read the first chapter, then came back to this one. I've read like the other 2 books that you've seen me review already while I was reading this. I've been struggling because the audiobook is really good, but I find myself not fully paying attention. And when I was reading it physically, there were a lot of words that I was not familiar with. And so I found the, why did I almost say thesaurus? Glossary really helpful. And then I would put in the audiobook and I would notice myself just listen and not look up the words and like almost not recognize that it was a word that I didn't know. And I was like, oh, well, I'm just using context clues. But no, I need the glossary. I need to be flipping. So I've been mostly reading it physically, but it's just been a struggle. I'm around 300 pages in and I just didn't know when to come and update you and tell, like, what would I tell you? That it's just like, fine, that's not an update I want to give. You would tell me to DNF and pick something else up. So I've been reading it and I'm halfway through. And at this point, I'm now very glad I didn't update you on it before, because it would have just been like me not knowing what to say and just like rambling through something to try to get content out there. Now that I'm halfway through, oh, this is in fact something that I'm appreciating. It took me a while to get there, and I'm still not loving just the constant action, because that's not often what I'm looking for. But I am at this point, and I have been, you know, throughout sprinkled in, getting the things that I was expecting. And I would say overall, this book is about grief. I think that's the number one theme that I would put forth. And for that, it's something that I'm really appreciating. We are following 2 main characters. We're going back and forth between perspectives. One of them is a mother and then her son, one of her sons. And she is grieving her old life and also grieving the life that maybe she thought she would have. So she gave up her old life. She was a warrior, a great warrior. And due to things that you find out in the book and you learn and you follow her journey with, she ends up in a marriage that she doesn't necessarily want to be in. She becomes a housewife. She gives up the things that she cares about, and she creates this beautiful family, and she's very proud of that, and there's wonderful things to live for. But at a certain point in the book, and mentioned in the synopsis, she finds a moment, a turning point in her life where she needs to fight again. So there's her and what she is dealing with, and then her son is grieving at the beginning the the idea that like your government does not have your best interest at heart. So he's experiencing disillusionment, and somebody is bringing information to him for the first time in his life, which happens for a lot of people. The first time someone brings up to you a moment for you to question what you've known before. And I think that's a difficult thing to like have to unlearn certain things about life. His family and the empire have raised him to be a warrior, and he sees certain things happening around him and is being raised in a certain way and has certain beliefs. And then the idea that everything the government is telling you may not be true comes to light. The concepts of propaganda and censorship are brought up in order to keep them like feeling safe, which is good, but also these fallacies about like how capable you are and how the empire will always protect you and you're invincible. There's magic in here, it's elemental, and they can control different things, which is super interesting. So in a way, it's having to grieve the person you were before you had information, grieving your innocence in a way. And I just think all of those themes are really interesting. And then grief comes more into play because something fucked up just happened. And I hate to say that like that's the thing that got me really invested in the book. But now I've read a couple pages on, and like the aftermath of this is something that I appreciate the book doing. This is war, like terrible things are happening, people are dying, and showing the aftermath of war and how a community is broken, and how people have to come together. I just think it's going to be really interesting from here. I still think it's objectively too action-packed for me, but not for the book and the story it wants to tell. But with what we're getting now, I feel more invested than I did before. And I'm ready to like fully commit to this today. I'm gonna finish this today. But that's my update finally. After like 300 pages of reading, I'm finally letting you know what it is and how I'm feeling about it. Okay, I'm like super in public and probably shouldn't vlog here. Liam is at his orthodontist appointment. Oh my God, there really is people everywhere. And he might get his braces off today. It's either this time or next time. So that's exciting. My update on my book, chapter 20 was one of the most devastating things I've ever read. It was long. Like this is how many pages chapter 20 was. And it was exhausting, emotionally exhausting. I felt like I was being held hostage by the book. And then chapter 27 is called The Duel. And that was fucked up. Like that was crazy. There was a certain character arc I was not expecting, and being called The Duel, not knowing like who it's about or what it's regarding or whatever, you can imagine there are two people who are facing against each other with, again, a lot of emotional turmoil to wade through. I could have cried, but I'm like out in public and there's certain distractions, which I definitely needed. So now I only have like 100-ish pages to go, and the book is hurting me. Okay, final thoughts on The Sword of Kaigen. Proud of myself for getting through it. This was emotional turmoil. While the second half was I preferred the second half. Oh, I am getting sick. Well, I preferred the second half over the first, and I think it was just that I started understanding more, I started getting more invested. It's not that it was better. In fact, I think objectively you could say that the second half might have been worse, because some of the characters' decisions and motivations started getting less clear, and it was a little more chaotic as far as like the writing and also the plot. I was wondering a couple times, like, does this make the most sense right now? I kind of wish this character was given this different journey, like we were getting here a different way, and I just started questioning a little bit of what was happening, but like really not that much. There isn't too much to critique about this. I'm giving it 4 stars. And where does that leave the video at? 17.75 as its final score. And our official winner of the entire thing was BookTube, which is exciting because obviously I'm on BookTube. This is my main platform, and this is where the video series originated. I started just reading BookTuber favorites, and it's good to know I still can find favorites from BookTube, but I am so grateful that I have these other platforms and can find other creators who aren't existing on the other platforms. The Sword of Kaigen is something that has been heavily featured on all of them. Like, I've seen this everywhere. I've seen it from a plethora of creators. Originally, it was self-published. This version, I wonder if it underwent some editing before this one, or if they just took exactly what it was and put it out like this. It definitely like sets itself up as the potential beginning of a series, but it is pitched as a standalone, and I don't think there's been any news about it continuing. I know the author writes in the same world though, in a different, I think it's middle grade, I want to say, unless I'm completely wrong. I see how it could be set up for a series. I don't want it because like I don't need series to continue, even though it's a 4-star, like I'm not continuing. Any fantasy I gave a 4-star last year, like even Mistborn, I'm not continuing. I'm just bad when it comes to series, but I appreciate this a lot for what it is. I don't know if I have any other things to say about it. It was just a real journey to read. Like, my feelings were all over the place. And because I don't have a lot of fantasy to compare it to, that's when I question, like, should it be a 4? Is it actually a 4? But at the end of the day, I think this was really solid. I really liked it. I need to take a break from fantasy now. I will say that. I was gonna roll right into a kind of dragon vlog, and I'm gonna postpone that now. There were actually some dragons in here though. So I read a little bit of a dragon book last year. So I'm making moves in the dragon fantasy, and I'm really glad that I finally read this. Like, my overall feelings are just a satisfaction when I read fantasy that so many people love and talk about, and I just want to be on it. I just want to know what they're talking about when they're crying over something. Like, I know why now. Definitely recommend it. I didn't leave this video with a 5-star, but I read some interesting things, and I'm happy to have done it. This series is over. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this entire time. If you haven't seen the other episodes, they're linked down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!